The last tech tool that I utilize in my math class is a website called Desmos.com. One of the main features of Desmos is its powerful graphing calculator that can be used to help students visualize different functions and transformations. So I think it's incredibly valuable to give students instant feedback on what potential transformations could happen based on what we do to a function. So for example, by adding a number to the outside, students can quickly see that the graph will shift up. And by subtracting a number on the outside, the graph will shift down. Other characteristics like adding a negative in front, students have the opportunity to visually see that the negative sign flips it, or that if you subtract inside the parentheses, that'll do the opposite of what you might expect. So this -5 inside the equation shifts the graph to the right. So rather than graph things by hand, Desmos allows students to play around with the graph. And I found that them just playing around helps them understand the characteristics by just analyzing what happens when they plug certain numbers into the graph. So something to think about. Other opportunities that Desmos has is different classroom activities where students can investigate certain topics. For example, the activity of the week is a transformation activity using translations, reflections, rotations, and so on. You would get a class code projected on the screen, and students would be able to use tablets or laptops to complete this investigation. There's a nice little welcome screen that walks through students through the activities, and there's little tips for teachers that include possible answers and cues that you can give to your students. So for example, this says try and complete this challenge using reflections only. As the students progress through this, they're asked to analyze whether students are correct or incorrect. They're asked to describe their thinking and explain what's going on, and then really just demonstrate their knowledge of the subject material. I did do one of these recently, and here is what my students did for the graphs of trigonometric functions. So I get to see each of the students' graphs and how they completed it, what their screen looks like, and then I get to read the written explanations as well. So the question was that the sine and cosine equations ended up generating the same graph. And so I get a varied set of explanations that just identify kind of where my students are at in terms of their thinking and analysis of what's going on. So I think Desmos is a tool that is not necessarily utilized in a lot of the classes in my district as much as it could be, given how powerful it is as a tool for allowing students to play around with graphs, and then the new activities that allow students to think critically and work with classmates or independently on coming up with different explanations for what's going on. So that is Desmos.